We have a lot of sheep on our farm, and one of the questions I get a lot is, what about the wool? Why don't I make any videos about us shearing our sheep? And that's because we don't. These Katahdin sheep, which are a type of hair sheep, shed like dogs every year, while other sheep breeds like this one require it to be sheared or else it can get a disease and die. In this video, I'm going to be explaining the 5 differences between hair sheep and wool sheep. Starting off with their coat types and what their coats are actually made of. Hair sheep coats are mostly made of true hair fibers, similar to goats and deer. Their individual hairs are straight, smooth, and thick in diameter. Wool sheep coats are pretty much the exact opposite. They're made of wool fibers, which are curly, finer, and are designed to trap air for insulation. This crimp, which is a fancy word of saying wavy or curly, is what makes wool warm. Many hair sheep actually grow a short wool undercoat during the winter, but it always sheds naturally in the spring, while wool sheep just continue to grow their wool. Wool sheep never shed this off, so if you don't shed them at least once a year, it can get ugly. Their fleece becomes heavy, which can cause overheating, which can cause death, and also increases parasite risk and fly strike, which is also death. So with wool sheep, you have no choice but to shear them down every year. But why? Why is there 2 different kinds of sheep nowadays? Well, that leads us to difference 2, their history. Because a few thousand years ago, wool sheep didn't even exist. Hair sheep were the only kind of sheep around until farmers started selecting hair sheep that would produce more wool during the winter and held on to it later into the spring. And they continued to breed those together until genetic selection created the wool sheep, with their natural shedding trait now non-existent. And if you think about it, it does make sense why wool sheep aren't natural. I mean, how could they ever survive until domestication and human intervention if their wool never naturally shed off? It's pretty fluffin' crazy. Don't get the soap, Mom, I didn't say it. The third difference is their traits. Hair sheep are much better at hot climates and humid regions because their body heat can escape easily, while wool sheep do well in the cold wind and snow, but can overheat badly in warm and humid temperatures. Hair sheep also, with their particular coat, shed water quickly, which helps with things like mud and manure not sticking to them as easily, which makes for a much cleaner animal overall. While wool, as you can already guess, absorbs moisture very well, and it stays wet much longer, which leads to wool sheep having more skin infections, fleece rot, and fly strike. Having that extra fluff isn't always a good thing. Hair sheep also carry very little extra weight, and they have no metabolic cost to grow wool year-round, which helps them put on weight, grow, and reproduce faster. While in comparison, wool sheep fleece can add an extra 10 to 30 plus pounds on one sheep, and their energy and metabolism is mainly going into growing wool, not meat. This also plays into the 4th difference between them, their meat characteristics, which surprisingly to me is also very different. Hair sheep meat, which I have eaten myself, is particularly lean. Not as lean as cow, but lean in the least, with their fat more evenly distributed inside the meat than wool sheep, with wool sheep fat being more on the outside of the meat. And while most say that hair sheep meat is milder in flavor, it's also less gamey in taste than wool sheep meat. And as I mentioned before, hair sheep are able to grow more meat faster because they aren't putting that significant energy into growing wool. Hair sheep can also be butchered at an older age than wool sheep because their meat doesn't get as tough over time. But this is all to be expected because hair sheep are bred for meat and not wool production. I just thought I'd mention it. Finally, the last difference is their management. It's no surprise to you now that wool sheep are way more maintenance than hair sheep. They got fleece that needs to be sheared every year, they're more susceptible to diseases. They even, for health and hygienic reasons, need their tails docked to reduce manure buildup, because of all the wool on their tails that can trap the manure and produce fly strike. Hair sheep don't have those problems, and that's why they're so much more popular here in the US, because we're lazy. We don't want to do more work than we have to. Nobody does. You really think I want to do this every year with over 100 sheep? Yeah, no thanks. In a lot of cases, the profit when you sell the wool is just enough to cover the hired help costs. And that's if you have a market for wool, so it's just not worth it for us. But please comment about what sheep you have and what differences you like about them. Thank you for watching That's a Farm. All right, party's over. Get out.